Unlike the conventional portraits of the stately matriarch we see in dusty biographies, Jennie Jerome's story is a tapestry of complexities. Her rebellious American spirit set against the formal splendor of Victorian Britain, her love for high society's glitz, and her struggles to carve out a space for her own ambitions. This script will pull back the velvet curtain on Jennie's world and reveal a vibrant life that resonates as much today as it did over a century ago. We'll journey through her glamorous debut amid the swirling transitions of the 19th century, step into grand ballrooms perfumed with candle wax and gossip, and wander through the heartbreaks and controversies that shaped her final years. By the end, you may not see Jennie Jerome simply as Churchill's mother, but as a fiercely independent force who redefined possibilities for women of her era. So settle in, let's turn back time and rediscover the mesmerizing life of Jennie Jerome. When Jennie was born in January of 1854, the United States was on the brink of seismic cultural and political shifts. The Civil War was still a few years away, but tensions were building. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Queen Victoria reigned over Britain with a sense of decorum, empire, and moral strictness that we associate with the Victorian age. This was an era of strict social hierarchies, particularly in England, and of rapid industrial innovation that was transforming everyday life. Steam engines, railroads, factories that darkened the skies of major European cities with their sooty plumes. On one side of the ocean, a simmering conflict threatened the very foundation of the American Republic. On the other, a centuries-old monarchy was trying to maintain order and continuity in the face of modernity. Jennie's life, from its earliest days, would reflect these swirling cross-currents in a wonderfully vivid way. Her father, Leonard Jerome, was a bold and often unpredictable man who earned the nickname the King of Wall Street. He built fortunes and lost them, only to rebound again in spectacular fashion. Unlike many in the high society of that period, Leonard had an irrepressible streak of flamboyance. He enjoyed the theater, sponsored operas, and famously indulged in lavish horse races. Jennie's mother, Clara, came from a quieter social background, though still comfortable, offering her daughters a softer maternal counterbalance to Leonard's restless energy. In many ways, young Jennie inherited the adventurous spark of her father, alongside a certain cultivated poise that made her social appearances the envy of many. Surrounded by wealth and extravagance, she quickly learned the art of making an entrance and understanding the complexities of upper-crust social life. But beneath the glitter, the Jerome family contended with ongoing financial pitfalls. Leonard's fortunes could vanish nearly as fast as they grew. As a child, Jennie became familiar with the tumult of living on a precarious financial edge, even while she was being raised to rub shoulders with the elites. Yet the Jeromes hardly let adversity slow them down. Whenever Leonard faced major financial hits, he would find a new opportunity, sometimes overseas, sometimes in booming American cities. This took the family frequently across the Atlantic, giving Jennie a cosmopolitan upbringing. She was exposed to French culture, English customs, and the restless vigor of American capitalism, all before she even reached her teenage years. The variety of these experiences not only sharpened her social skills, but gave her a self-assurance that was unusual for a 19th century woman. While other young ladies were taught the refined arts of being agreeable, Jennie seemed on a trajectory to become a cultural shapeshifter, someone who could charm you in any parlor, in any language. One of the most pivotal chapters in Jennie's life commenced in the 1870s on the storied Isle of Wight, off England's southern coast. It was here that fate took the form of a yacht race. Lord Randolph Churchill, a younger son of the 7th Duke of Marlborough, was present, as was Jennie. The sparkle in her eye didn't go unnoticed. Neither did her American accent, or her quick wit, or the confident grace with which she carried herself through a crowd of curious British aristocrats. It was as if she had stepped right out of a novel, the charming outsider who would soon become the talk of every drawing room. Sparks flew between Jennie and Lord Randolph, so much so that they became engaged within days of meeting, some say within just 3 days, though the exact timeline has been debated. That swift and dramatic whirlwind drew the attention of both families. The marriage was formally concluded in 1874, sealing Jennie's entry into one of Britain's most historic lineages, the Spencer Churchills. Now, being the daughter of an American financier was hardly the same as descending from centuries-old British nobility. Though wealthy, the Jerome family lineage was considered new money, overshadowed by aristocratic lineages that traced to medieval times. The British press made no secret of its fascination and occasional contempt for wealthy American women marrying into the British upper class. Some saw them as novelty sensations, others as brash interlopers. Jennie, however, was anything but a timid newcomer. She quickly became a charismatic figure in London society, hosting lavish dinners and parties that sparkled with wit, gossip, and more than a few scandalous rumors. The future Edward VII, still the Prince of Wales at that time, was a frequent guest in her circles. Jennie had an allure that blended her American confidence with a genuine cultural curiosity about her new homeland. Before long, she was recognized as one of the great beauties of the day, rumored to have a small tattoo on her wrist, and regularly attracting compliments on her style and presence. Early in her marriage, Jennie gave birth to her first son, Winston Churchill. His birth famously took place at Blenheim Palace, the ancestral seat of the Dukes of Marlborough. It's been widely recounted that Winston was born 2 months premature, although rumors persisted for decades that the official timeline was slightly fudged due to the extraordinary speed of Jennie and Randolph's engagement. Whatever the case, Winston's birth marked not only a new chapter for the newlyweds, but also for history. The future Prime Minister of Britain, whose leadership during the World War II would make him an iconic statesman, was cradled by a woman whose personality was as formidable as his own would become. Jennie's second son, John, arrived a few years later. Though Winston would achieve worldwide fame, Jack's life would prove interesting in its own right. But in those days, Jennie's main focus was her husband's political career and her own place in the social swirl. In 1884, Lord Randolph's political star was on the ascent. He secured a position in the government, eventually becoming Chancellor of the Exchequer. Jennie played a vital role, acting as a confidant, muse, and behind-the-scenes political partner. Despite lacking an official title or power, she proved instrumental in hosting political gatherings, forging alliances with influential people, and assisting her husband with witty, sharp insights that many believed shaped his speeches. Her close interactions with the Prince of Wales, among other VIPs, gave her an extraordinary vantage point on the era's political happenings. This proximity to power felt exhilarating to Jennie, though it came at the cost of intense public scrutiny. Her every move, every rumored flirtation, every choice in attire was fair game in the tabloids of the day. For all her seeming confidence, Jennie grappled with profound worries. Lord Randolph's health became increasingly fragile, and their financial stability, so often reliant on the generosity and fortunes of the extended Churchill family, was anything but guaranteed. Indeed, Randolph's father, the 7th Duke, was not always pleased about his son's political maneuvers, let alone his new American daughter-in-law. The couple often found themselves juggling social obligations, political duties, and precarious finances. Yet Jennie persevered, throwing herself into charitable and social causes to shore up the family's public standing. This included philanthropic support for hospitals, as well as fundraisers that at times overlapped with her brand of high-spirited socializing. At the heart of her personal life, however, was a restlessness that few understood. Despite her glamorous public persona and the image of a devoted mother, Jennie had an irrepressible sense of independence. She loved traveling, frequently visited France, and was said to be an avid lover of music and the arts, something she inherited from her father. Throughout the 1880s, rumors intensified that she had multiple affairs with some of Britain's most prominent men, including royals and political figures. Society columns thrived on innuendo surrounding her close relationships. Historians have debated whether these rumors were exaggerated by a scandal-hungry press. Some believe that, yes, she indeed had a series of passionate liaisons and used her charm to gain access to the corridors of power. Others argue that the press and her critics amplified normal interactions, punishing her for being a vivacious American who dared to navigate British high society on her own terms. One lesser-known anecdote about Jennie concerns her personal sense of style. As a young woman, she reportedly not only donned eye-catching gowns, but might have boasted a small serpent tattoo on her wrist, an exceptionally bold statement for any Victorian woman of refinement. Although some sources argue it was simply a discreet design or a rumor invented by her detractors, the notion itself captured the public imagination. That detail, however trivial it might seem, underscores the tension between her flamboyance and the strictly demure expectations of a Victorian lady. She navigated that tension with remarkable bravery, forging a path that was Jennie's own, even if she had to pay a price in whispers behind her back. Ultimately, the glitter of her early married life came under the dark shadow of Lord Randolph's declining health. Many historians have speculated that he might have suffered from a neurological disease, possibly syphilis, though more recent scholarship suggests a less sensational cause, such as a brain tumor. Still, rumors ran rampant in Victorian society. Jennie found herself torn. On the one hand, she'd wholeheartedly supported her husband's political ambitions. On the other, she felt stifled by his deteriorating condition and the constraints of a marriage that had lost its initial spark. She poured her energy into helping him as best she could, hosting gatherings that tried to keep him in the public eye. Yet there came moments when her vivacious nature was at odds with the heaviness of caring for a dying spouse. Lord Randolph passed away in 1895 at the age of 45, leaving Jennie widowed in her early 40s. She was neither entirely impoverished nor completely secure. There was some inheritance, but far less than many might assume for a family so close to the Duke of Marlborough. Winston was just beginning to make his mark as a journalist and military man. Jack was also exploring his own path. For Jennie, the question of what next loomed large. It was a question not easily answered in Victorian society, which typically relegated a widowed aristocratic woman to polite shadows. Rather than disappearing, she continued to sparkle, crossing paths with artists, writers, and men of means. If the old guard expected her to slip quietly into the background, they were mistaken. In 1899, with her children grown, Jennie embarked on an ambitious project called the Anglo-Saxon Review, a luxury quarterly magazine that showcased fine bindings, historical essays, and contributed pieces by well-regarded writers. This was no mere pastime. It reflected her intellectual curiosity and her desire to shape cultural conversations. Though the publication's lavish production costs meant it wasn't long-lived, it remains a testament to her willingness to take risks and engage with the literary and political currents of the time. Her involvement with the magazine revealed a woman keen to assert herself beyond parties and salons, aspiring to influence the realm of ideas. By 1900, the new century brought fresh beginnings. Jennie's story took a startling turn when she married George Cornwallis West, a man younger than her own son Winston. The British press, never known for its gentleness, pounced on the scandalous age gap. Yet again, Jennie stood at the center of a swirl of gossip. This time, the talk was even more pointed, casting her as the archetypal older woman who defied the norms of a society that expected women past a certain age to remain quietly in widowhood. Nevertheless, the new Mrs. Cornwallis West seemed unwavering, continuing to host gatherings that included prime ministers, lords, and luminaries from the arts. At times, Winston himself would attend these functions, appearing more amused than outraged by his mother's choices. He valued her intelligence, drive, and sense of style, which had clearly rubbed off on him in more ways than one. The marriage was not a fairy tale, however. Over time, it became apparent that George Cornwallis West's youthful vigor clashed with Jennie's well-established routines and deeper attachments. She was more than twice married, a mother, and a social powerhouse who had already seen more of life's drama than many people 3 times her age. By 1914, amid strains both personal and financial, they divorced. Society watchers seemed to revel in the news, reminding the public that this was the American adventuress whose life rarely stayed tranquil. Jennie's close friends, however, saw deeper layers. A woman deeply wounded by the death of her first husband, overshadowed by her brilliant older sister Clarita, and sometimes overshadowed by her own children, especially Winston. Despite these difficulties, she soldiered on with characteristic aplomb. By that period, Winston Churchill was already making strides in British politics. Though mother and son had not always been especially close during Winston's childhood, Jennie's social obligations and travels meant Winston spent significant time away from her. They grew closer as Winston entered adulthood. He recognized in her a certain audacity, an intellectual grit that he too would exhibit in public life. She would advise him, meet with his political associates, and cheer him on as his career blossomed. Their relationship wasn't simple by any means. Winston once remarked in a moment of boyish longing that he wished he had more of his mother's attention when he was younger. Yet by the early 1900s, mother and son had built a mutual respect that withstood the swirling controversy surrounding Jennie. When World War I erupted in 1914, Jennie, like many aristocratic ladies, devoted herself to nursing and hospital work. She helped raise funds, visited troops, and showcased a philanthropic side that may surprise those who only know of her social escapades. Behind the scenes, she used her influence to gather donations and coordinate support for medical facilities, proving herself a capable organizer under even the dire conditions of wartime. While she was not alone in these charitable efforts, her dynamism and transatlantic ties provided unique avenues for assistance. Beyond the glamour of her earlier years, here was a woman rolling up her sleeves to engage directly in the critical challenges of her time. In 1918, an astonishing third marriage took place. Jennie wed Montague Phippen Porch, a man even younger than George Cornwallis West, by about 3 years. This final marriage proved that she would not settle into a docile widowhood, even well into her 60s. Porch was an administrator in the British civil service, posted in Nigeria, if somewhat overshadowed by Jennie's luminous profile. The boldness of this late-life decision to marry a younger suitor again stirred the tabloids and raised eyebrows at dinner tables. From London to New York, yet to those who genuinely knew Jennie, it was just another testament to the fierce independence that had characterized her all along. Tragically, Jennie's vibrant life ended abruptly in 1921. She had slipped on a staircase while visiting friends, fracturing her ankle. Medical complications, including gangrene, led to an amputation of her leg in an attempt to save her life. Sadly, she did not survive. On June 29, 1921, she passed away, leaving behind a profoundly complex legacy. She was 67 years old. British society turned out in force for her funeral. Among those in mourning was Winston Churchill, who would go on to say that his mother had an extraordinary sense of style and a rare sparkle in her eyes. To him, she was one of the most remarkable women he had ever known. Now let's pivot to delve deeper into the emotional heart of Jennie's life, the personal stories and intimate moments that shaped her character beyond the headlines. One often overlooked story comes from letters between Jennie and Winston during his early military career. While their relationship was sporadic in his childhood, some letters from Winston to his mother reveal a wistful yearning for approval and emotional warmth. Jennie's replies, alternating between brimming pride and a certain maternal formality, paint a complex picture of a mother who loved her child, yet struggled to express that love in conventional ways. Perhaps it was the era's mores, perhaps it was her own restless nature, or simply the demands of high society, but the letters show Winston as a young man seeking reassurance, while Jennie offered what she could: advice, encouragement, sometimes money, but rarely the full maternal closeness he craved. Later in life, they achieved a shared camaraderie that Winston would describe as both intellectually invigorating and affectionate. Another poignant aspect often passed over in shorter biographies is how Jennie coped with Lord Randolph's passing. Stories from close friends recount how, in the weeks before his death, her radiant social presence was tempered by genuine sorrow and fear. She sat by Randolph's bedside, comforting him and maintaining her composure for the sake of the family. She showed a remarkable loyalty in his final days. Yet the moment the funeral had passed, she seemed determined to burst free of the stifling sense of widowhood. Some described her as living with a near manic determination, throwing herself back into society events. For her, perhaps, the best coping mechanism was motion, a refusal to allow grief to lock her in place. People who only saw her outward flamboyance never realized the raw heartbreak she must have felt losing the man who was, in many ways, her partner in ambition and an anchor to respectability within Britain's aristocracy. Controversies abounded in Jennie's life, of course. One of the most persistent rumors is that Winston Churchill was actually fathered by another man. Sometimes the finger was pointed at the Prince of Wales, given the widely circulated rumor that Jennie had numerous lovers. No reputable historian has uncovered evidence that Winston was anything other than Lord Randolph's child, yet the rumor reveals how society viewed Jennie, a glamorous figure about whom people felt compelled to speculate wildly. There's also ongoing debate about whether Jennie's involvement in political circles crossed ethical lines. Did she leverage her personal charms to sway influential figures and push her husband's career forward? Probably. But that was by no means unusual in the upper echelons of politics at the time. The difference was that she was a woman who made little effort to hide her involvement, enraging traditionalists who believed politics should remain an all-male preserve. To gauge Jennie's historical impact, we can look at two distinct areas: her influence on Winston Churchill and her broader cultural significance as a boundary-pushing socialite in Victorian and Edwardian Britain. As for Winston, it's clear that his mother's flamboyance, intellect, and resilience left a mark. She introduced him to powerful figures, gave him a taste for high society, and undoubtedly contributed to the self-assured manner he carried on the world stage. Even though Winston's relationship with her was not the sentimental mother-child bond we might imagine today, the qualities she exhibited, political instinct, a fearless approach to social conventions, and a certain flair, were arguably seeds that would bloom in Winston's own leadership style. Throughout his career, Winston maintained a respect for strong personalities, particularly those unafraid to stand out. Her life also underscores the precarious position women occupied, no matter their wealth, in a system that prized lineage and male inheritance. Despite her father's fortunes and her own aristocratic marriage, Jennie spent her entire adult life maneuvering to secure financial and social stability for her family. She was keenly aware that aristocratic rank did not guarantee comfort, especially once her husband passed away. In a sense, she was an entrepreneur of sorts, launching a magazine, establishing philanthropic networks, and forging friendships in high places. The tension between her flamboyant independence and her reliance on male-dominated power structures illustrates the complicated dance many women of her time had to perform. And that wraps up today's video. If this video resonated with you, please give it a like, leave a comment with your feedback, and subscribe to stay updated on upcoming videos. Appreciate you watching.